If there's anything I can do, I want to show you the power of investing. But not only that, but I'm going to show you a personal mistake that I made at a young age. And if I would have changed this, I would have $1 million extra to my name at the age of 40. Now, let me walk you through the entire process of what happened. So when I was working, I started at 15 years old. I was working at Skyline, McDonald's, restaurant jobs, and I was making decent money. I was working a lot, and quite honestly, I could save pretty much 100% if I really wanted to, but realistically, I was saving about 70%, and that was actually factual. So all the numbers I have today are actually factual based on my history and what I was able to save. Now, the problem was I was saving this money and I was not investing this money. And as you know, you cannot save your way to wealth. And this was the biggest mistake, in fact, $1 million mistake that I made. Now, before I get into the actual numbers and the breakdown of everything that I personally went through, I want to show you into the mindset that I had at the age of 15. I did not grow up with financial literacy. Let's put that out there. So when I was 15 years old, the only thing I knew was save money. I didn't know that there was such thing as investing. I didn't know that there was a Roth IRA out there. I didn't know that there was brokerage accounts out there. I knew nothing when it came to investing. And if I would have known just a little bit extra, I would be worth $1 million more at the age of 40 years old. And so that's the issue a lot of people are having right this second. They don't understand what they're losing by not investing. And it's not money out of their pocket, it's opportunity cost lost because they don't know what to do. All I'm going to say today is learn from the mistake that I made. I've already paid the dummy tax, so just learn from this and begin today. Because if you don't grasp this concept with the numbers I'm about to present, I don't think I can help you, respectfully. I really would love for you to start your investing journey today, but I can't promise that you're going to take the right steps after I explain this. Sometimes it actually amazes me of the directness that I have with people when saying, these are my mistakes, this is what I did. And if you just learn from these mistakes, you're going to do excellent in your investing journey and be way better than me. But some people just sit there and fear their whole life. And it's unfortunate, but if you are in that position, I understand. Feel free to reach out if you ever are nervous, worried, or anxious about investing, even after this video. But with that being said, let's break this down in the numbers, specifically of what happened when I was a young 15-year-old. So I started McDonald's, I started Skyline, I was working these restaurant jobs, and I was making good money. And I was able to save all the money in the world because I was living at home doing nothing. And I did. I actually saved this money. And I'm going to break down the exact numbers on the screen for you so that you understand and you can follow this pathway. So when I started working, I worked a decent amount of hours. I worked about 20 hours a week, pretty much at all my jobs. So 20 hours a week at minimum wage for 52 weeks of the year was about $7,540. Now, obviously, I don't remember exactly how many hours, exactly how many weeks I was working, but this is a pretty good rough estimate of where I was. And if I would have saved 70% of that, which was totally reasonable, I would have been able to save a good chunk of change, let's call it over $5,000 that year. And I did. Unfortunately, it went to my savings account. And so my savings account, PNC Bank, was earning, I think, 0.0001%, as many of our savings accounts do in America. It was unfortunate, but I thought I was doing the right thing. I was building up this cash balance. I felt really good. I felt like I was in the right spot. I was actually doing something as a 15-year-old that none of my friends were doing. It gave me a lot of confidence to kind of reconfirm my own bias that I was doing very well. And I wish I would have known that if I would have moved this money from a PNC bank account to a Roth IRA because I had earned income, I would have changed my life by millions of dollars. But I didn't know that. So therefore, I put this money in my savings account. It was unfortunate, but it happened. So I continued to work at McDonald's, Skyline, but I also picked up mason work. My father-in-law was a mason, and I was working really, really good hours. I was making way more money under the table, low key. So at 16 years old, 17 years old, and 18 years old, I was doing McDonald's, Skyline. I actually worked at Oriental Walk for a little bit. I was doing mason work. I was doing full-time mason work at one of those years, and I was getting paid very, very well. I was working a lot of hours. I was working pretty much full-time in the summer, 40-hour weeks, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 at a minimum. And then during the school year, obviously I would back that down quite a bit, but still a pretty significant amount of hours during the week. And then also on the weekend, I would be working side jobs all the time with my father-in-law. I made a lot of money during those years, and I saved a lot of money. And I remember how baller I thought I was because I had a big savings balance and none of my friends did. And I was like, wow, I'm really, really getting ahead. And it hurts me to this day that I thought that was good. And that's what many people do think. They think that savings is a good thing, but savings, my friends, is a quick way to lose wealth. You're never going to get wealthy this way. And so my savings was being eaten by inflation. I had no idea that was the case because I didn't know what inflation was. I was 15 years old. That wasn't a conversation in my household. I was told to save money, be a good steward of my money, and that's about it. So I would go to jobs, I'd work hard, I'd save my money, and I thought I was doing good. But in reality, I was in a middle-class neighborhood and I was listening to middle-class advice. But if I would have had the people at Deloitte 7 years before I met them, this would have changed my life entirely. And like I said, by millions of dollars. So I continued to work these jobs. I continued to save up a lot of money, and I continued to do the same thing over and over and over. To the point I was working at Sprint, the cell phone store, and also some side jobs, and I was making really good money at that point in time. During college, when I was home from school, during school, whatever the case is, I was working a lot of hours, making a lot of good money, and I was just saving so much money. And if you actually see, at 20 years old, I was working at Sprint and also an internship at Louisville Gas and Electric, LG&E, down in Louisville, and I made about $52,000 that year. It might sound sick to hear, but if I saved a pretty big portion, I would have been able to save, let's call it $3,000 a month roughly. It would have been able to invest that money. But again, I was doing that, but I was putting in a savings account this whole entire time. And I'm going to show you the specific numbers in a second as to if I would have taken that money and invested in versus saved. But at the time, I really just didn't have that down. And so that was a massive issue. And I was saving all this money the whole entire time. So I was losing purchasing power by the second, to the point where at 22 years old, I actually worked my first full-time job at Deloitte, and I was making $52,000 per year. And we didn't start investing right away. We were paying off debt. I didn't think investing was that important. I didn't really have a great investing knowledge at that point in time. It was, I didn't know what I didn't know type of thing. And so all in all, throughout these years, from 15 to let's call it 22, that's a lot of years of working. That was 8 years of working. And I made a lot of money during that time. If I would add up my income from that time, I made almost $220,000 as a 15-year-old to 23 years old. I made good money. I worked hard and I did a lot of hours. But the problem is, again, like I said, I was saving this the whole time. Now, I'm going to walk you through an exercise. Is if I would have taken that money and I would have invested that money, my life would be a lot different right this second. So if I would have invested that money and I walked through this balance, every single year. So obviously we're taking an assumption that we're saving the majority of money. We're assuming that there's a 10% return because I was young. I would have been in the S&P 500. And if you actually look at historical returns, that would have been easily the case. And so over the years, if I would have invested that money, I would have $150,000 roughly at the age of 22 years old. Now, that is not the whole story to this whole puzzle. It's the opportunity cost lost because I did not invest. So obviously I did not have that money because it was saved and therefore it was used / eaten by inflation. But if I would have invested that money, let it run, it would have about $150,000 of value at age 22. Now, if I would let that sit and invest over the next couple years, let's say 18 more years to the age of 40 years old, I would have $832,000 to my name, more to my net worth. On top of that, if you add just 2 years to the picture, let's call it age 42, I would have an extra $1 million to my name based on the work from age 15 to age 22. It's unfortunate because I'm not going to ever receive that or recoup that. That's money gone. That's money that was not used effectively, and I can't catch up for the time that I missed. Now, I was 15 to 23. I think a lot of people were in a lot worse spots. At the end of the day, I'm okay. And we've been able to build wealth since 22 at a rapid rate to where we're well over $2 million net worth, and we're approaching the $3 million mark at the age of 32. So I think we figured this game out early enough, but I can't stress enough is if you don't have a current financial plan, you're not extremely confident in everything you're doing, you are leaving a lot of money on the table. I can guarantee it. There's a million different ways I can slice and dice it as to what this would be. Compound interest just being one of those issues that you don't have in place. But if you don't know what you don't know, it's a scary reality when you actually calculate what you could have. It's basically like not maximizing your potential. So a lot of people are going to be average their whole life. They're not going to ever actually do this, and they're not going to think this is that serious or whatever. And they're going to be like, oh, well, this is how I grew up. This isn't that important. This is just another talking head talking about compound interest. But let me tell you, if you do your math, you're going to be sick to what you're losing right now. And it's lost potential, and it's also lost early financial freedom and financial freedom altogether that you could have if you just paid attention. And so if you're working that job, you're not excited about the job every single day, you're doing something in your life that you don't love, and you're not actively focusing on this topic that we're talking about today, I don't know if I'm the person to help you, because it's loud and clear as to what you should be paying attention to right now. And it's in fact the only thing I'd be paying attention to. It's quite amazing that most people say they're too busy, and then they go off to work for a boss, and that boss tells them what to do, and then they're upset, and they never take the second to put the effort in for themselves because they're too tired from work, and they continue to run this rat race their whole life. Until you break the cycle will continue. And I hate to say it, but it's just the truth. And so I hope that you take this today and understand that not only my mistakes of making $220,000 over the age of 15 to 22, but I saved the money, I did not invest it appropriately, and I could have had an extra almost $1 million at the age of 40 years old, but at 42, it would be $1 million more to my net worth, which would be crazy. If you expand that past the age of 42, it even gets crazier and crazier and crazier. You guys can do the math, obviously. If you start with $150,000 at the age of 22, let it run to age 40, 18 years, you'll have $832,000. If you do 20 years, 42 years old in my situation, you would have $1 million, and then you guys can continue to run the math for extra years to come using a basic compound interest calculator. I'll put the compound interest calculator in the show notes below so you can do that, but I also highly encourage you to do this for yourself and to see how much money you're investing in your situation and how much money you could be investing on top of that to fast track your financial goals. If you need help, I'm always here. We have the Millionaire Club that we just just opened, and you can check that in the show notes below to get started today for just $47 a month. And it makes all the sense in the world. If you're sitting on the sidelines, you're losing money actively as we speak, you're actually saving money by joining the Millionaire Club, which is crazy to think about. So with that being said, I will see you next Monday.